Yeah, let's check it out. This is the last, hopefully the last bicep exercise video you're ever gonna watch. What is up? It's your boy Johnny Shreve, IFBB Promos of Tell Like It Is. Welcome back to the channel. We're here again at the Blue Star Nutraceuticals headquarters. We're gonna bring you through one of the best bicep videos you've ever watched in your entire life. I promise you that. Without further ado, guys, keep your eyes glued to the screen and your ears glued to the speakers. Let's learn some shit. All right, check it out, guys. In this video, we're gonna cover science-backed, proven techniques on how to build your biceps even bigger. Proper training techniques and fundamentals to make sure you're doing it optimally or not wasting any time being in the gym. And then creating the best mind and muscle connection you're ever gonna have so you can feel your biceps while you're training biceps so you can end up having the biggest biceps you've ever had. Okay, so before we dive into getting bigger biceps, we have to understand where the bicep is and what it actually does. So mainly we have two parts of the bicep, the brachii and then the brachiradialis. So if you want to make it easier, short head, long head, and then part of the forearm goes into here. Now, what does it do? The bicep, all it does, most of it, is does elbow flexion. It also does help with supination, right? It helps do this to your arm, okay? Now, if you're looking at this part of the arm, which is attached to this, it's gonna help with also flexion. So when you're looking at building the bicep and then programming the bicep and looking at how many movements does the bicep need, how many exercises do you think the bicep needs? I'll let you think for a bit. One, literally one. You can say 1 to 3, but here's why it only really needs one. It does elbow flexion. Even though it does supination as well, when it comes to this getting bigger and us doing this, that's all it does. So if you're programming your bicep workout to have like 4 or 5 exercises in, or I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4, it's kind of redundant. Do you have to train only one? No, you can definitely do 2. And I'm gonna show you 2 that I like to do. And the reason why I do these 2 is because it basically hits the entire head and the entire arm for what I need for developing my bicep. Now, I'm gonna do something like a supinated curl, and then I'm gonna do a hammer curl. The supinated curl is going to basically do exactly what the bicep does, which is elbow flexion. And then I'm gonna do a hammer curl, which is gonna put more emphasis on the brachiradialis, that part of the forearm that you wanna have big as well too. So when you're flexing your arm like this, or doing like a selfie, or with your buddy and you're trying to point to the camera, it looks nice and big, right? You want this nice meaty part engaged. So if you're looking at developing this and all of this, for me, all you need is a simple curl this way and a hammer curl. So again, what I'm talking about, movements that I like to do, an easy bar curl. Now this is one of your staple compound movements for biceps, compound bilateral movement. I can focus on both at the same time. I can load a little bit more and I can get a great activation. Now, why I like to use an easy bar is, for the most part, being comfortable. Some people, when going fully supinated, it's not comfortable on the wrist. That's why they made an easy bar. So you can easily pick the bar up and your hands in a supinated position still, but there's not that much stress on the wrist. Now, when we're doing compound movements like this, or say bilateral movements, the biggest takeaway from here is understanding how to do the movement properly. Because this movement is a really good bicep curl, but can turn into a accidental drag curl. And that being simply, the big mistake I see is the elbows cracking back and going up like this. If we're trying to get the most amount of stress and load onto the bicep, we want to have the elbow sitting in front of the body a little bit, letting the shoulder get depressed, and then only curling with the bicep. And then coming up and coming down, avoiding having the elbow shooting back when it comes up. Now, if I want to do a drag curl, that makes a lot of sense because that's exactly how we're supposed to do it. But if you're in the gym and I'm looking at you training and I'm like, hey man, what are you doing? And you're like, Johnny, I'm doing a regular easy bar curl. I'm gonna say, well, no, you're not, you're doing a drag curl. So understanding proper technique and form to really emphasize a great muscle contraction is very important. There is a great point to use a drag curl. It's a great exercise to do to build the muscle as well too. Is it better than doing the curl I just showed you? No, it's not. It might be better for some, might be better for others. But knowing the difference and understanding proper technique is going to be what's going to make you have a better overall contraction and build a better bicep. So when you're doing any type curls like this, again, the line of pull is important, that we have tension on the bicep the entire time. Curling the bar and coming up to here, there's no more tension. The bicep is now resting and we're just hanging out. So knowing the line of pull and the range of motion to keep tension on the bicep is important. So letting the shoulders roll back away from your ears and elbows staying in front of your body a little bit, and then head up and then being able to pull from the bicep. There's tension all the way through, even to here. Any higher, then we're incorporating other muscle groups that aren't going to help build the bicep. Think of proper form, a good range of motion, and then time under tension. Curling up, under control, and then down. Something you would think about when you're actually doing a bicep curl. And this is any type of curl you're doing. I can lift my arm like this very easily. And you can see I'm doing bicep elbow flexion. Now there's a difference between doing this, and now there's a difference between actually flexing the bicep on the way up and flexing the bicep on the way down. And that's where your muscle-mind connection will start to increase. You're not just pulling the weight up and putting it back down. You're flexing your arm up and flexing the arm down. You're keeping constant tension on the bicep the entire time that you're curling, instead of just depending on the weight to contract the muscle when you're doing the pull. So let's talk bilateral movements, right? Right now, I'm doing dumbbell seated bilateral supinated curls. When I get the question of, is it still a bilateral movement even though they're, weights independently on one side? It's still bilateral because we're moving at the same time. We're bilaterally moving at the same time. It would be the same thing as if I had a easy bar in my hand as well too. They're both moving bilaterally. And that's what makes it a bilateral movement, even though I have one weight on the other side, another weight on the opposite. Now, a little of the science behind that, when I'm lifting at the same time, I consciously know, because I can see myself lifting two things at the same time. My body only knows the stimulus. It knows that at the same time, there's a stimulus in my bicep that's being active at the same time. So that's why you might be able to lift a little bit more doing bilateral curls with dumbbells, as opposed to doing one dumbbell at a time. The body's gonna compensate from one side to the next. It's also that cross-body type action that happens. So say someone has an injury on one side. Should you not train that side? No. Thing is, if you actually train the opposite side, it does actually help the other side. So while I am using two dumbbells, one on each arm, they're moving at the same time, which makes it a bilateral movement. What makes it unilateral is when one's going at once. This is your unilateral movement from here, whether it's doing the whole entire set with one arm or it's alternating one side to the next. Let's dive into isolation movements. And you're probably thinking, what's the difference between an isolated movement and a unilateral one? When you're doing isolated movements, what you're doing is you're literally locking yourself in a position that only lets that movement or that bicep or that muscle do its thing. So, give you guys an example. When I'm doing unilateral bicep curls, my lat helps keep my body in place. My chest is actually gonna help with stabilizing and adduction of the shoulder. So when I pull the weight in, you literally can feel the anterior part of my delt, the clavicle head of my chest, my lat is all helping with this movement to keep it in its right line of pull. When I come to a preacher curl, the pad is allowing my arm to rest. The top of this is my armpit, taking it away from my chest. So when I'm pulling, the only thing that's allowed to pull right now or to assist me is just my bicep. So doing isolated movements like this is gonna help a lot with activating the bicep. But what it's also gonna do, which is the biggest thing, is it's gonna give you that much more greater mind to muscle connection. I'm literally staring at this muscle and flexing on the way up and then controlling it down. And I'm here just isolating this one muscle group. My lats aren't helping keep my shoulder in place. My chest isn't adducting my shoulder in. My delt isn't helping with any of the flexion of my shoulder to help pull the weight up. So this is one of those pure isolation movements that you need to be adding into your arm day to really get the benefit of your bicep exercise. All the way up and all the way down. Ow. Ow. In a good way, ow. Okay, so let's really dive into proper technique, and I've kind of brushed over it a little bit as we went earlier in the video. Understanding what the biceps job is to do. It's to pull this arm up. That's its job. You weren't created to have biceps to curl dumbbells. You were created to have a bicep to pull this lever up so you can probably scratch your nose or to feed yourself. So now we understand that its only job is to do this. Isolating it is what makes this a workout, because I don't need to isolate my arm to scratch my nose. When I'm loading the muscle, I need to make sure my body's in a position that it doesn't contradict my form or the integrity of the actual lift. So for instance, if I'm doing a bicep curl and you see my shoulder do this and then doing this, or I'm curling and my trap is coming up here, or I'm curling and I'm swinging my hips, those are all things that are going to take away from your bicep getting most of the piece of the pie. And here's what I like to explain the most. Think of like a pie chart. 80% of that pie chart should be filled in by the targeted muscle, in this case, bicep. That 20% is going to be divided up with, your lats, your chest, your shoulder, your core, your legs, your feet positioning. All those things are going to aid so you have 80% of the lift, not just me creating that number, but that's going to give you the ability to really isolate and put the majority of the stress on the bicep. Every time that you lift and you're doing this, you've now decreased that pie chart. Now it's at 40%. Every time you do this, you've now taken some of that percentage and put into the traps and given 20, 30% to the traps. If you think about it, yes, we can do all of this, but if you're trying to really grow your biceps, and say you're someone who has a hard time growing a bicep, it's gonna take you even longer. So we're trying to maximize efficiency. So to make some easy points for you, we wanna make sure that the elbow stays in line in front of the body. This is going to put the greatest amount of tension, plus it's going to have a really good line right from the bicep tendon all the way down. Anything closest to your midline, which is right here. Your midline would be like, say, like your ab area. Anything close to midline is going to be very easy. If you think about doing dips, fairly easy, right? If you think about doing like decline, pretty easy, right? And then we start going into, say, chest press, getting harder. We start getting into incline, then shoulder. Same thing with biceps. Here's my line of pull to my bicep. If I'm curling from here to here, yeah, for sure, this is a good workout doing a drag curl, but it's a lot easier. You can lift a lot more weight doing a drag curl than you can if your arm stayed out here and curl from here. That's why preacher curls are a lot harder than doing drag curls. That's why hammer curls are a little bit easier than doing just your regular supinated curl. Everything's furthest away from midline. Now, if we really want everything to really connect and work, how do we make sure that our entire body is playing in the back seat to the lead role in this movie, which is biceps? If we're, say, just standing or seated, it doesn't really matter. Make sure your feet are in a comfortable position, maybe a little bit outside shoulder width apart. Your hands are going to be in a position where they're a little bit outside shoulder width apart too, and it might change depending on your mobility or how wide your shoulders actually are. If you have super wide shoulders, it might be a little wider out. Starting from there, making sure our shoulders are back and away from the ears, and then letting the weight naturally depress our shoulders. If I just let my arms relax, this weight is going to lower my shoulders. I'm going to aid that by pushing my arms to the ground even more. Now that I'm locked in from here, I'm going to just bend and flex. So right now you can see my arm, it's semi-flexed, and right now at the start of me pulling this, I'm flexing, and I'm flexing up. And now I'm actually moving the weight up by engaging it. I'll show you the difference. Here's me relaxed, doing a curl. I'll do it slow. It's only 40 pounds, I'm doing it slow. You can see what my tricep looks like, you can see what my bicep looks like while I'm curling. So now we know how to actually engage the muscle and have a better mind-muscle connection. The question now lies, how much and how often should we be doing biceps? Let's find out. how often should I be training biceps a week? The biceps are a muscle just like every other muscle in the body. We're looking at muscle hypertrophy, the expansion of the fluid around the muscle cell. We need to train the muscle at least 10 to 20 hard sets a week. Doesn't mean 10 to 20 sets. That doesn't include your warm-up sets, your feeler sets. I'm talking your hard sets. So if you look at right now, say on a Monday, or I don't know, say you're training biceps on Monday. I don't know who does, but here, let's say today you did. You have, say, 4 sets, or say you have 2 exercises. You have supinated curls, and then you have hammer curls. And you do 3 hard sets of 10 to 15 reps. Well, you have 6 sets you just did on that one day. Because it's a small muscle group, you can train quite frequently. So say the next day you do back or arms, or back or say chest again, you do another 6 sets. That's 12 sets. Now when it comes to, beginner or advanced, beginners are probably gonna be doing a little bit more to the 10 hard sets a week, when the more advanced will start to creep up with the, 15 to 20 hard sets a week. So you don't have to do it all in one day. Again, there's no point of you doing 4 or 5 different bicep exercises when your bicep only does literally 2 things. So you can do 3 if you want to. That's totally fine. You wanna do a bicep, a supinated curl, you wanna do a hammer curl, and then maybe doing a pronated curl, that's totally fine. Right there, you did 3 sets. Right there, you have 9. And then your second day, you do another 9. That's 18 sets in a week. Somewhere between what I just said, 10 to 20 hard sets a week. And that's gonna help you build muscle. Now again, the biceps is a very, very small muscle. It's not, if you train like this, you'll exhaust the muscle, and you'll avoid having that really irritating tendon feel from overloading too much. So think about that. 10 to 20 hard sets a week. You can divide your biceps up on 2 separate days, and you can tackle a majority of those sets on both those separate days. Just spread it out. All right. Now, I know I'm doing rope tricep extensions and we're in a bicep video, but we need to talk about the importance of making sure that we are equal on both sides. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because of my injuries in the past and a little bit of neurological issues, if you look at my biceps right now, the biggest difference you might see is how much this swoops down more than the side. I still have fairly big biceps, but what completes the arm is the other side of the bicep. Remember, if you look at it, the bicep sits on the front or the top part of the arm, where the tricep sits on the side and the entire back. So to complete the entire arm, it's very important that you train both sides equally, not just for aesthetic purposes, but for just health purposes. Your tricep and bicep works just like the rest of your body. If I have a overactive or a stronger quad, it's gonna cause some kind of impingement in the hips because my hamstrings are weak, and vice versa. So you wanna make sure that you're almost equally as strong on both sides, for your posterior and your anterior side, posterior and anterior. So it's important that you train triceps just as much as you train biceps. I want you guys to understand how to progressive overload biceps. It's like every other muscle group in your body. Nothing changes, nothing's different. It's not just because you have a bicep, you do something differently. But I want you to make sure that we're not always stuck on always adding weight. I can tell you right now that my sweet spot is between 35 and 45 pounds. I haven't gone much over that weight in probably about 2 years. Now, does that mean that I'm not growing my muscle? No, it does not at all. It just means that I found another way of progressive overloading that muscle. But when it comes to movements like this, feeling the muscle that much better, it's gonna be more so in your ability to slow the rep down, being able to control it a lot. Your progressive overload is gonna start from you being able to take the weight and make the rep as hard as you can by taking some of those tips I gave earlier, flexing the bicep up and flexing on the way down. So we're talking about progressive overload. Think about more so progressive overloading, the time under tension, the muscle activation, before we start talking about adding a bunch of weight. Because you're not gonna be able to continue to overload with weight over and over and over again. Otherwise, I'd be demonstrating with the 200-pound dumbbells. I've been bicep curling since I was 11 years old, no lie. Remember, taking your time to progressive overload is gonna give you that much more benefit in the long run than trying to jump with weight right away, and then you're in a sticking point and you have to regress. When it comes to building rip sleeving biceps, juicy, massive 22-inch arms, well, I mean, just as big as you can build them. We're gonna make sure that we have great time and attention, good technique and form. And one thing is gonna be above all else. I won't say above all else, but equally, is patience. Building muscle isn't gonna happen overnight. It takes doing the same thing over and over, forcing your body to adapt to that stimulus. So don't be in a rush to have big arms. Be patient, take your time. Make sure you're understanding how you're moving, making sure you know what you're moving, and understanding how to move it with good form, good technique, and good time and attention. And that's it. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. And for you guys, if you're new subscribers, we're not just a YouTube channel that's giving you this unbelievable free content. We've actually been creating amazing, award-winning supplements for the last 15 years. So for more information about that, guys, hit the link in the description below. And remember, we're pumping out 2 videos every week. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. You know how it is. Iron sharpens iron. Progressive overload your life. In the meantime, keep gym chasing. Peace.